And I think he's kind of best friends with his daughter now. So
Oh,
it's been
cool.
kind of
Commissioner Condor.
Parks first.
recognize that.
You do.
No, I don't. But it doesn't, it could be that we call the property something else, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll, checking. See. House, we have a lot about all of those properties, man, but I think have the notes too.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're no longer on mute. It looks like.
Suzanne doesn't have a week.
Use decisions for.
Yeah, I'm telling. Big Dave is. So you may have everybody. Liz can-
Hi, guys. Do we have any folks in the room? Katie?
No, we don't, no commissioners, but Commissioner, Perella said that he was not gonna be able to attend, so you have all of the commissioners.
Okay, great. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. We are meeting today just to do our work session. Tomorrow we'll have our executive session and our business meeting. But on the agenda today, well, why don't we go ahead and start with introductions, just for fun. And Shane, I'm going to turn it over to you first, if that's okay.
Sure.
A new face for the commission. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about yourself. I know you were on for the last meeting for a little bit, so
Right.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure everybody here was there though. So it'd be
I'll
good
just put them all asleep with my little spiel. So I'm thrilled to be on this commission. I look forward to working with all of you. Most of my work career, I am retired. Most of my work career was with the state. My last position was with the Department of Corrections, and I was the assistant director for the 14 prisons to do workforce training, research, sentencing, really pretty much all the positive touches that we hope made a difference on our recidivism. And then I was retired from that for a month and then went to work for the Oregon Community Foundation, which I knew nothing about that either when I started. And I retired probably about 6 years ago. I'm very active in our Salem community, working with different nonprofit organizations and political efforts. But so that's just me in a nutshell.
welcome. We're so grateful to have you as part of the
Thank you.
commission. So
Thank you.
your extensive background. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Betty.
Hi, everyone. My name's Betty Izumi, and I'm the commissioner from the Portland area.
Thanks. Do we have, I'm trying to look through who else we have. Stu, do you want to go ahead?
Hey, good afternoon. Stu Spence from LeGrand, City of LeGrand Parks and Recreation Director, and I'm representing East of the Cascades as your commissioner of East of the Cascades.
Awesome. And Joel, are you on? Let's see your face.
I am on.
Awesome.
I'll turn my camera on as soon as I get done eating lunch. I didn't think anybody
Oh,
wanted
no
to
worries.
eat
No
lunch.
worries.
I'm Joel Condor. I'm a commissioner, and I represent the middle part of the state, mostly the mountain region there. So that's it.
Great. And I realized I forgot to introduce myself. Liz Hill, Chair of the Commission. I'm from Congressional District 2, just east of Roseburg. And do the folks in the room want to introduce yourselves?
Oh, Katie Gothier, I'm the external relations manager.
Denise Warburton, the executive assistant to the commission and director.
I'm Matt Rippey, Deputy Director for Field and Community Services with Oregon Parks and Recreation Department.
Everyone, Stephanie Coons, interim director for Oregon Parks and Recreation Department.
Great. And then I see Assistant AAG Shipsy on the screen.
Yes, welcome to my fabulous office. I'm Steve Shipsey and I'm counsel to the commission. Thanks.
Thanks. And I see JR. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah.
JR?
Sorry, if I can unmute. Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. JR Collier, Deputy Director over Central Business Services for OPRD.
And Dennis.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dennis Comfort. I'm the Interim Director of Operations, formerly known as the Coastal Region Director.
Wonderful. Am I missing anybody that I can't see on the screen?
I think you got them. No,
Suzanne.
Yeah.
Oh, yep, there's Suzanne.
Good afternoon. I'm Suzanne Harpel, and I'm the Director for Human Resources.
Great. Well, wonderful. So we'll go ahead and dive into our work session. I understand we have the governor's team here, the natural resources team, here to speak with us a little bit about a few things going on in the governor's office. So I don't know, Chandra, do you want to introduce your team and who all's here?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chair Hill, members of the commission. And for the record, my name is Chandra Ferrari. I'm a Natural Resources Policy Advisor with the Governor's Office. And with me here today is Amy Schlosser, and she can introduce herself as well. Jeff will not be joining us today.
Yep. Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Schlosser. I'm Governor Kotek's Climate and Energy Policy Advisor.
And I think Amy is going to kick us off today, actually, and then I will wrap up for us.
Wonderful. Thanks. Go for it.
Yeah, so I think we may have sent over some slides. It's totally fine if you don't have them. I don't have them pulled up ready to share. So I think I'll just, I will start sharing them momentarily.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thanks. It's a pretty short slide deck, but for those of you that like to view information visually, wanted to give you something to go off of. But I guess while we're getting that started, I can get us, I can launch our presentation. I'm sitting in for Jeff Huntington because he can't be here today. So I am going to share some of his talking points. So we are here to talk about Executive Orders 2526 and 2529. These executive orders collectively are intended to knit together a more cohesive focus for natural resources and energy in relation to a changing climate. Resiliency is the cornerstone for natural resources, and affordable, reliable, and clean are the cornerstone for energy and climate. Both of these executive orders represent North Stars for natural resource agencies and this administration, and they came about after a lot of discussion with natural resource agency directors. Lisa Sumption was at the center of those discussions. And now, and both of these executive orders were adopted in fall of 2025. So now we're focused on implementation. So the goal today is to take the opportunity to bring some clarity of purpose and pathways for implementation for your consideration and discussion. And we're happy to answer any questions as we go along. So next slide, please. Okay. Executive Order 2529, it sets Governor Kotek's policy priorities and administrative direction for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, increasing climate resiliency, and advancing the transition to an affordable clean energy future. While the Parks Department is not listed or named in the executive order, we wanted to share this information with you just in case you had any questions and wanted to learn more about its directives. Executive Order 2529 aims to achieve these policy objectives through three sort of categories of administrative action. First, it directs state agencies to prioritize implementation of the Oregon Energy Strategy pathways. These pathways were identified through the Oregon Department of Energy's energy strategy, in which they conducted an extensive amount of modeling to identify 5 pathways for achieving the state's climate and clean energy objectives at the lowest cost to consumers. So the executive order directs agencies to develop and implement a coordinated, proactive approach to advance these clean energy pathways, which aim to reduce the overall amount of energy that we use, to transition to clean energy, to strategically electrify end uses, to increase the use and production of low carbon fuels, and to increase resiliency along all levels of the energy system. Next, Executive Order 2529 directs agencies to help get clean energy projects built by coordinating coordinating approaches and streamlining existing processes to help increase and speed up the siting and permitting of clean energy projects and development of associated infrastructure like transmission lines and energy storage. The executive order specifically focuses on helping to get projects built that contribute to affordability and reliability in our energy system. And then finally, the executive order aims to help the state advance a transition to a clean energy economy by increasing the use of public-private partnerships and directing agencies to explore emerging and advanced clean energy technologies that could present opportunities for development in the state. Finally, the executive order includes some accountability and implementation directives requiring agencies to produce biennial reports, put together implementation plans, and develop metrics for tracking progress over time. And our intention is to work closely with agencies subject to the executive order to ensure that implementation is moving along and to address any roadblocks or challenges as they emerge. And I think Chandra might talk a little bit about, we have very similar accountability framework in the executive order that Chandra is going to speak about in a minute. So she might have a little bit more detail on how natural resource agencies are implementing these orders. So I'll pass it over to Chandra, unless anyone has any questions. I know that was really, really high level, and yeah, happy to answer any questions you might have, but I'm guessing that you're going to be more interested by the information that Chandra is going to present.
Yeah, and we're happy to take questions on both of the executive orders at the end of the presentation or along the way. So please feel free to ping at any point. Okay, we can go to the next slide then. And I just wanted to reiterate, Amy's framing of these executive orders as a North Star. This is really particularly valuable for our natural resource agencies because we have 14 of them, and we have 30+ boards and commissions that are doing natural resource related work, including your commission doing very important work. And they're doing this work with a very small sliver of the budget. Less than 3% of our general fund rate is heading to natural resource agencies. And so given the really vast importance of the work that we're talking about in the natural resource space and the work before you all, and given this limited resource, the governor really felt that there was a need to make sure that we were having a vision and approach to streamline and coordinate our work and really focus our work in on the most value added actions. And so that's really what this is about. It's about, linking all the threads of our different natural resource agencies together under an umbrella that we can all connect into. So Executive Order 2526 is, at the broadest level, it's about taking action to promote the resilience of our natural lands and waters, our working lands and waters, and also our communities. So I'm going to start by describing just a few of the factors that really drove this executive order. The first is an acknowledgement of the value of our natural and working lands and waters, understanding that these are immensely valuable to Oregonians and for many different reasons. They provide economic benefit, environmental benefit, cultural benefits, and of course, recreational benefits, which you all know about very well. And they also present opportunities to increase carbon sequestration. And we also understand that resilient lands and waters are a key component of building and fostering resilient communities as well. The second thing that this EO recognizes is that Oregon is experiencing change. And a lot of that change is climate-induced change. So you're seeing that on the ground. We're seeing it this year with changes to our water availability. We have changes to our snowpack. We have changes to when precipitation occurs, or changes to our air and water temperature. We saw that with our heat dome event a few years ago. Changes to the frequency and severity of our wildfire. So all of these changes that we are experiencing and that are projected into the future are impacting the resiliency and the health of our lands and waters. And thus, they do impact and challenge the ability of our lands and waters to provide multiple benefits to Oregonians into the future. So third, this EO recognizes that to retain those values, to maximize the values that our natural and working lands and waters can provide into the future, that we have to act now to build their resiliency to change. And finally, this EO recognizes that, again, we have a small slice of the budget that is likely not to change in the immediate future. We need to prioritize and we need to leverage resources wherever possible. We basically need to be wringing as much value and resiliency out of our actions as possible. And given the stakes and importance of this topic, that we, agencies, boards, and commissions are really best served by leveraging our resources in a really coordinated and strategic fashion, and to do that in coordination with partners where we can. So those are kind of the underpinning bigger thread concepts that drove the executive order. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk just a little bit about the main, I'll concede this is a lengthier executive order, but I'll talk through some of the main components that you'll find in the executive order. And of course, if you have questions, we can get into those. But the first bucket of actions was around trying to secure a common understanding of what we're trying to achieve. So when I talk about resilient lands and waters, what do I mean? What do you mean? Right? What would people think about when they hear that term? And we want to make sure that everyone, or at least our agencies that are working on a lot of the actions to further this, have a common understanding of what that means. So we have a process underway that's being led by 2 agencies, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, to define resilient attributes. What are the characteristics of resilient lands and waters that we can kind of use as a filter to drive actions moving forward? And this process is playing out right now. They are pulling together various perspectives, folks who have engaged in this work, both in this state and outside of the state, to provide some perspectives to the state on how they might view this work. And then they're going to be putting this together in coordination with a technical team. And then once we have that work done, again, it's going to provide kind of the first filter for some of the subsequent actions to come in the executive order. That second bucket of actions is really about helping the state secure high resiliency natural and working areas going forward. And so what that means is in the context of working lands, and by working lands, I mean areas that are actively managed or utilized for production, whether it's agricultural, forestry, ranching purposes, but that also are stewarded or can be stewarded in such a way that they produce other benefits as well. So maybe that's fish and wildlife habitat, maybe that's that they can sequester carbon or improve water quality, that kind of thing. So where the state has a nexus into those stewardship practices, maybe it's, funding programs, or maybe it's technical resources, those sorts of things. We're taking a really hard look at those programs, tools, processes that working lands and waters providers utilize to see, if there's ways to improve those. And that could be, again, finding, where the constraints are to using the tools now. It could be thinking about the ones that are working well and trying to scale those. It could be thinking about where our toolbox is too limited right now, and maybe we need to be thinking about new things to add. So again, this is an executive order that's targeted towards agencies. So our connection into stewardship on working lands and waters really is through our programs, our tools, our incentives. And so that's where we're focusing our energies on making sure that those are working as well as they can be. As it relates to natural lands and waters, we have been asking our agencies to support and further actions that will improve resiliency in 10% of lands and waters in Oregon within 10 years. And through this action, we are really trying to focus in on areas that are most likely to withstand climate-related impacts going forward. So these are really our resiliency anchor areas where they're providing a lot of benefit now. They're likely to continue to do so even with climate-induced changes, or they could be really high functioning, high resilient with some focused attention. So the EO asks for prioritization, also asks for consideration of the potential for co-benefits with any actions the state's taking, and also asks that agencies are looking at durability. When we're investing and taking actions, are they likely to persist into the future? So those are just a few considerations under that section as well. The next bucket of actions is directing our agencies to lead by example. So this is directed to our state agencies that own or manage lands or waters, And it directs them to implement strategies to enhance climate resiliency while also continuing to execute on their current management objectives. So again, this is not to replace your current management objectives, but it's looking to see where we can enhance climate resiliency as a piece of them as well. And then the last bucket of actions is around building community and wildfire resiliency. There's a couple very large things in here. One of them is around developing a plan for Resilient Oregon. This is being led by our resilience officer in the governor's office. And it's an effort to work with community partners to identify strategies to help communities adapt and thrive in the face of climate risks. So this is really a ground up led process, a lot of community groups across the state. And the scope of the effort is much broader than just natural and working lands and waters, which is really kind of driving the rest of the executive order. It's the range of climate risks that communities face. But that's an effort that's being led out of our office with a plan to have this plan, or it's called PRO for short, Plan for Resilient Oregon, in place later this year. The other piece of this category of actions is around implementing our 20-year landscape resiliency plan, which is really geared towards increasing the pace and scale of treatments and prescribed burning across our landscapes, and also thinking about furthering fire-adapted communities, helping communities establish defensible space around their properties, increase the use of fire-resistant building materials, and engage in other community risk reduction actions. So it's a very large category of actions. I'm going over it very quickly, but just wanted to emphasize that a lot of this work is already underway and being done. This is really about focusing in and trying to scale where that good work is happening. So those buckets of activities really comprise the main things that the executive order directs our agencies to do, but it also has a section that is directing how they're going to do this work. And again, what I referenced before is the value, one of the values of this executive order is it is supposed to be a convening space for all of our agencies that have different but connected missions and objectives. And so the EO requires the establishment of an interagency leadership team that's comprised of all of our a representative from all of our natural resource agencies to drive the implementation of the executive order and to coordinate around different aspects. One of those coordinating functions will be around the development of biennial work plans, which each agency is directed to do, and they are directed to share that work plan. And again, this work plan is clearly just for each individual agency and the pieces of the executive order that they're going to be advancing. They're going to be sharing that work plan with their respective boards and commissions. So you all should be seeing one of those work plans from the Parks Department. And the objective is that there's also room and space for community conversation around the work plans as well. So there's public comment at the commission meetings, and that would be a space to have some conversation about the work plans. We're also putting together an interagency technical team. As you might imagine, there's a number of questions that kind of come into play with the directives in the executive order that need some more focused attention before they can be implemented. The interagency technical team is going to be assisting with some of those questions, including them as the first order of business, again, the development of the resiliency attributes to kind of get us on the same page about what we're trying to achieve. And then there's also a directive to form an advisory group of board and commission members that would meet semi-regularly to also advise on the implementation of the executive order. We have not comprised that group yet, but that's in the near-term work plan to do. And again, this is to really help make sure that we're sharing a lot of perspectives and not missing any opportunities or challenges that each individual board and commission or agency could be providing. And then finally, there's a provision in the executive order about key performance measures and taking a close look at those and considering adjustments where needed to make sure that we really are tracking the right sort of metrics and where they can connect to some of the deliverables under this executive order and where that makes sense for an agency, that we're considering steps to adjust those KPMs. So in sum, this is really an executive order about understanding that we're experiencing change right now, further changes coming. We really want to capture the value of our natural and working lands and waters in a way that can drive coordinated policy, prioritize where actions will be most meaningful to securing, again, maximum resiliency, maximizing co-benefits, and that we really are thinking about expanding and securing our toolkit that our agencies have to respond to change while creating the space for innovation and partnership and hopefully community solutions as well. So I think that wraps up what I was going to say in a nutshell today. And I apologize. I know there's a lot in this executive order and we went over it relatively quickly, but we are happy to have conversation. And I'll note too that we are not intending this to be kind of a one-stop shop. We are hoping to be able to open dialogue with you all too, and have this be a recurring conversation theme that we can come back to you with in the future to just see an update on our progress.
Great, thanks, Chandra. I'll open it up if anybody has questions for Amy or Chandra. Or any comments about these executive orders? Commissioner Spence, go ahead.
Thank you. This is sort of, I always get concerned about unfunded mandates, right? So, or extra drain on staff time or all those things. So can you talk about that a little bit? What the drain might be on the agency or other state agencies, et cetera. Thank you.
Sure. Commissioner Spence, thank you for the question. The executive order, you're right, does not come with any new resources right now. But what the executive order is geared at, and I wouldn't say, I don't think I'd frame it as a drain. I think the hope is that we are maximizing the existing resources that we have and that we are leveraging one another. You know, we're not doing things in a vacuum. If there are efficiencies to be gained across agencies, we're finding those. If there are ideas to be shared across jurisdictions, state agencies, federal agencies, we're capitalizing on where those things are, right? And we're driving policy and actions forward in a way that meets the most collective need. That said, I think we're also positioning ourselves to be in a good space to secure new resources if and when those materialize, right? By having a strategic space or strategic actions where we have the justification for why this program over that program is going to get us, you know, further along in our goals, for instance. And I do think we concede that, you know, one exercise that the agencies may end up having to embark on is where things should be advancing over other things, you know, like that is a something that our agencies have to do now, but we are asking that this be a filter when they are having those conversations. Like we recognize there are some things that you can't do anything about as an agency, like you're going to have mandated actions that you must do to fulfill your mission. And so this is not saying don't do those, but where there is discretion and when there is opportunity for, again, leveraging and coordination with other agencies, that we're finding those spaces and we are thinking about what, you know, maybe there's a program that's put in place 20 years ago that we don't think is as viable now. And we should be having those sorts of conversations about what maybe isn't as relevant for today's.
Commissioner Griggs, go ahead.
Yeah, that's probably the most expansive executive order I've seen. So my hat's off to you with putting forward that challenge. My question to you though is, with the 14 agencies and the different advisory teams that you've mentioned, who is taking the lead? Who's holding the umbrella? Is that DAS or is that the governor's office?
Thank you, Commissioner Griggs. Yes, the governor's office is convening the leadership team.
Okay.
So we are kind of the central point of contact. Our hope is structure in place where
kind of frozen.
I think we lost her.
Yep.
Hopefully have started dialogues with outside stakeholders and with their boards and commissions will take on, if you will. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me? I just got my internet's not stable.
Yeah, we lost you for about half of that answer. About right in the middle. If you want to repeat it, I don't know.
Yeah, let me take, I'll just take, I'm just gonna take my camera off. Can you guys hear me okay right now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So hold on a second. Oh yeah, so the governor's office is convening the leadership team right now. But I think what I was saying was the hope is that what we're really doing is structure where you don't necessarily need to have the governor's office there, right? The agencies have a space and a space to convene around common objectives and deliverables. They've instigated conversations with their boards and commissions, with their stakeholders, that you kind of create, something that's occurring of its own volition, if you will. So we are there, we're driving it, but we're kind of hoping that it eventually goes off on its own, if you will.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Thoughts? I don't see any. Well, thank you for the presentation, and we're looking forward to continuing to work on these things as more information comes out and we get more information from either Stephanie or Lisa. But yeah, I appreciate you guys being here today and sharing it.
Thank you, Chair Hill. We really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you all today. And again, we're also happy to take any questions that might come up down the road. So don't hesitate to ping us if it's ever helpful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Sounds
you.
great. Bye. All right.
So Chair Hill, next we have Chris Brubaker from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission to do the next session on conflict of interest training.
Great. Sounds good. And so this, just for clarification, can you explain why we do this? And it's required for the commissions to do, and this kind of checks the box for us so that we don't have to do it individually, right, Katie?
Correct. Each of you have to do these trainings once per term. So per your 4-year term, you need to use these trainings. So this is our offering of you for your term. And then Chris will explain a little bit more about some of the requirements. So go ahead, Chris.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris, and I am with the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. I'm a trainer, and I'm excited to be here. I just got to get my stuff sharing. It's going to be one quick second. All right, can everyone see my slides?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about conflicts of interest and prohibited use of office. We train those two together because the way that they are worded in the law makes them very similar. And so it's important that you understand both of them when you are looking at potential and actual conflicts of interest. So one of the reasons why this training is important, aside from the fact that you have to do it once per term, it's also important because the state of Oregon requires that all public officials, it's all of our responsibility to safeguard the public trust. That means as you do the work that you do, as you serve your community, the goal is that the community still trusts in you to do that work. And so that's really the reason behind the creation of the ethics law and the Ethics Commission. It's also important because it is our individual responsibility to follow this law. I say our because I'm also a public official, and so I have to follow all of these just the same as all of you do. But what this means is if an issue were to come up, no one's going to be contacting your agency or the chair. They're going to contact you directly and ask you about what happened and things like that. And so that's why it's important all of us have an individual understanding of what the expectations are. Just really quickly about this training. First, this training doesn't replace the actual need to look at the statutes in case you find yourself in a situation. Our goal today isn't that you walk away having, a perfect understanding of this law or that you've memorized anything. That'd be ridiculous. This law is very complex. There's a lot of gray area. Our goal is that you have an overview set of knowledge so that when something happens, when you find yourself in a scenario, a red flag goes off in the back of your head, that lets you know, hey, I should probably look into this a little bit more to make sure I'm doing what I need to. Also, this training does not constitute any form of legal advice, so please do not try and use it as such. That will not help you or me for that matter, so please do not do that. And then also, if you do have any questions, I noticed that there is no chat feature in this, so I will, at the end of each section, I will pause and take questions about what we just talked about. And then, of course, at the end, let's say, right after you get done with this meeting, of course, that's when usually everyone thinks of their questions. And so you can always reach out to us. We are open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. We want you to view us as a resource here at the Ethics Commission. You're going to hear me say that a lot. And so please give us a call or connect with us, and we can help you figure out what the best step to take is in whatever it is you're facing. Just quickly and briefly about us, we are the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. We do refer to ourselves as OGEC. So when I say OGEC, that's who I'm talking about. It's just a lot easier to say. We were founded in 1974, and we have jurisdiction over the Oregon Government Ethics Law, which is found in Oregon Revised Statute, Chapter 244. We have Lobby Regulation Law, which is found in Chapter 171. And we have the Public Meetings Law, which is found in Chapter 192. Of course, if we're going to talk about just a part of the ethics law today, but if you have any questions about any of those things, again, please reach out to us and we'll help you out. The ethics law is divided up into a few subcategories. Its categories are conflicts of interest and prohibited use of office. That's what we'll talk about today. We're also going to talk about private employment a little bit because that is actually a subcategory of prohibited use of office. It's also made up of nepotism, gifts, and statements of economic interest. And we're not going to cover those today. We like to start off with who does this law apply to? And it's a great place to begin. And so who the law applies to is going to be any public official in the state of Oregon. Now, a public official could be an elected or appointed official, could be an employee or an agent. The easiest way to know who a public official is do they do the service or do the duties of the public body that they serve? So I work at OGEC. OGEC is a public body. I perform those duties. Therefore, I am a public official. Now, the unique thing about this is that it doesn't say whoever's compensated for doing those duties, right? You don't have to be paid to be a public official. In fact, there are about 260,000 public officials in the state of Oregon, and most of them are in a volunteer basis. And so being paid isn't what makes you a public official. And again, the reason why that is so important is because it is the public official's individual responsibility to follow this law. Now, I like that. What that tells me is that if my neighbor is getting kind of squirrely, I don't have to worry about it. I know that I just need to focus on how I'm acting or my decisions, and I'm going to be okay. And so I do like that part of it, especially as complex as some of these rules can be. But you are required to follow it yourself. We're also going to be talking about relatives today. The law defines relatives in a very specific way. So we generally know what a relative is in our everyday life, what that means. But the law defines a relative as your spouse, your child or your stepchild, your daughter or your son-in-law, your parent, your step-parent, your sibling, your step-sibling, or all of those people for your spouse. Now, you'll notice that there are a few pretty significant relationships that are missing. And so we didn't forget to put them up there. The law does not count them as a relative per ethics law purposes. So grandparents and grandchildren are not relatives. Aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews are not relatives. Your cousins are not relatives. And so that's important to keep in mind as we go through all of these laws and rules. There are 3 unique relationships that are also considered relatives. And those are going to be first, any legal support obligation that you have. So if you've got a foster child in your home, or maybe you're being compensated to take care of someone who is disabled, while that obligation is there, they are going to be considered a relative by the ethics law for ethics law purposes. Also, anyone who is receiving a benefit from your employment as a public official, or anyone who you receive benefit from their employment, while that benefit is in place, they are considered a relative. This could be, alimony or child support being paid. Maybe someone's on someone else's insurance. While that benefit is there, the law is going to consider them a relative. We're also going to talk about household members. Household members is simply going to be anyone who lives in your home. So maybe your cousin is not a relative, but they live with you. Then they would be a household member, not a relative per the law. This could be your best friend. It could be someone you just met. Maybe you put out an ad and someone responded to it and now they live with you. Your roommates are your household members. And as we talk about these things, they're going to be affected as well. Now, a business is defined as any legal entity that's operated for economic gain. It's a pretty standard, straightforward definition, but that's important because businesses can be associated to people. They can be associated to you, to relatives, and to household members. How they're associated to you depends on the type of business and your role within that business. So for private businesses and closely held corporations, if you are a director, officer, owner, employee, or agent, then that business is associated to you. Truthfully, that is most of the positions. So that's what it looks like for private businesses. But for publicly held corporations, these are corporations that are traded on the stock market. You have to be an officer or a director for it to be associated to you. So what this looks like is if my son is a cashier at a local hardware store, he's an employee at a private business, that would be a business my son is associated. Now, let's say he goes off to college, he moves to a new city, and he gets a job as a cashier at Lowe's. Lowe's is a publicly held corporation. It is publicly traded. He's just an employee, so that is not a business that he's associated with because he is not an officer or a director. And so that's how the associated business piece works. There are other ways you can be associated to businesses. If you own any stock or equity in a business, at the private business level, it's $1,000 or more. And for publicly held corporations, it's $100,000 or more. If that is the case for you, then those are associated to you just as they are if you work there in the appropriate positions. Also, if you file a statement of economic interest form every year, which is coming up, then any business that you list as an answer in question 2, which is listing your sources of income, any business listed there would also be considered a business you are associated with, even if it doesn't meet the criteria we just talked about. So that is unique for statement of economic interest filers. That's all we're going to talk about those forms. So don't worry. We're not going to talk a lot about them, but it's important that you know that. Now, we've talked about what a business is. There are a few things that are not businesses. The first is going to be your public body. So I work at OGEC. The Ethics Commission is not a business, therefore I cannot be associated with it. Okay, so the agency or the public body that you work for is not going to be considered a business. Also, if you any nonprofit corporation that is a 501c, if you are a member on the board of directors or in an unpaid volunteer position, it is not considered a business and therefore you are not associated to it. Now, if you are in a paid position with a nonprofit 501c, we request that you contact us and let us assess that situation with you to get what your status is. And the main reason is because depending on the number after that C, the tax code, that can change some things, and it's just easier for us to analyze that with you. So if that is your case, please give us a call and let us help you figure that out. Now, we are going to move into conflicts of interest, but before we do we have any questions on the definitions or any of the, who this law applies to? Any questions there? All right. No questions. Let's go ahead and move on. Okay, so conflicts of interest, that's where we're going to start. The first thing you need to know about conflicts of interest is that there are 2 types of conflicts of interest. There are potential conflicts of interest and there are actual conflicts of interest. An actual conflict of interest is anytime you take an action within your official capacity as a public official that will lead to a certain financial effect. So that financial effect is for you, a relative, a household member, or a business with which you, a relative or household member, are associated. And that certain financial effect is guaranteed. So you're taking the action, it's guaranteed there will be that financial effect. That is an actual conflict of interest. So an example of this would be, let's say that you are on a board and the board has to decide, hey, we're going to paint the building and we are going to hire one of these 3 companies to come paint it. Well, I'll use myself as an example. I won't put any of you on the hook. I'm on the board. We got to paint this building. There's 3 companies up for grabs for painting this building. And my sister has a painting company who has put in a bid. So if I take an action as a board member to help decide who's going to get that contract, there is going to be a certain financial effect with an action that I'm taking for a relative or a business that a relative is associated. So because that is the case, that is an actual conflict of interest. A potential conflict of interest is any time you take an action within your official capacity as a public official where there could be a possible financial effect. So this is, again, that's for you, a relative, a household member, or a business with which you, a relative or household member, are associated. So using that same example, instead of actually picking who's going to get the contract, let's say, hey, I'm on the board and they say we need to paint some buildings. We're going to put a contract together that companies can bid on, but we want to talk about the makeup of that contract, what we're requiring. And so we're gonna put that to the board to decide on. So now I have a sister who has a painting company, right? She doesn't know about this contract. It's not even out there yet. But because there is a chance that as a result of what I am doing, the action I'm taking, there will be a contract that she could potentially apply for, right? There is a possibility of a financial effect for a relative or a business a relative is associated with. That is why I have a potential conflict of interest. Now, a lot of people ask, if nothing's happening, how can that be a conflict of interest? Your sister doesn't even know about this contract coming into existence. You're still creating the contract. So how is that a conflict of interest? That doesn't make any sense. And that's a great question. The reason why this is here is because I'm still in a position where I can make decisions or take actions that give my sister's company an advantage when it comes to getting this contract. So I could say, hey, while we're creating this contract, I could say, hey, I think we should only hire female-owned companies. Or I could say, hey, I think we should only hire companies with 10 plus years of commercial painting experience. I can put things in place that when it comes time for that contract to be bid on, my sister's company has an advantage over others. And because I have the ability to take those actions, I have a potential conflict of interest. Remember that a conflict of interest is taking an action within your official role that leads to that private economic impact for you, a relative, a household member, or a business with which you, a relative or household member, are associated. The example that I used showed that the private economic impact was a positive one, but that doesn't have to be the case. Even if you were going to be taking an action that would lead to a negative economic impact for you, a relative, a house member, or a business with which one of the 3 of you is associated, that would still be a conflict of interest. So any kind of impact is a conflict of interest. Now, we've talked about what a conflict of interest is. Now, the other important piece of this is, what the heck do we do if we have one, right? How do we take care of it? That depends on your role as a public official. As I understand it, most people here are elected officials, but elected officials handle that differently than employees, who handle it differently than judges, who handle it differently than the Legislative Assembly. We're not going to worry about those last two today. Their rules are kind of crazy anyway, so we'll just cover the first two. For employees, if you have a conflict of interest, you must provide a written notice to your supervisor asking them to dispose of that conflict of interest. You need to describe the conflict to them. You need to do this every time it comes up. So if your job is to audit a building and you have a conflict of interest that is involved in that process, and you do that twice a year, then twice a year you're writing your supervisor. Now, once you send it to your supervisor, they can do a couple things. They could assign the task to someone else if that's possible, or they could even just give you instructions. They might say, go ahead and process that as normal. It's fine, I trust you. They could say, why don't you process it, but I'll sign it so I can look over it before it goes out. Whatever it is that they tell you to do, you are good to do as an employee. Your responsibility is in the letting them know, right? And then they get to decide how you're going to handle it, and you're okay to follow that. For elected officials, it depends on if it's a potential or an actual conflict of interest on how you take care of it. So for a potential conflict of interest, you must publicly announce your potential conflict of interest on each occasion before any action is taken. So it needs to be publicly announced, and it needs to happen every single time. So if you're going to talk about a certain topic for the next 3 meetings, then you need to announce it for all 3 meetings. One time does not cover all. You also need to announce it before any action is taken. Now, we're not talking about public meetings law today, but it's important that you know that discussion or deliberation, those are considered actions. And so you need to announce this before you talk about this item with anybody in the meeting. So those are all really important things. Now, with a potential conflict of interest, once you have made that announcement, you are then good to talk about it, to deliberate on it. You can even vote on the item. You just need to make that announcement first. And that's for potential. That's when the financial effect is not guaranteed. Okay. Now, when it's an actual, so the financial effect is guaranteed, the same thing as before, you need to publicly announce it on each occasion before any action is taken. However, once you have made that announcement, you are not allowed to participate in any discussion or debate, and you cannot vote on anything. We get asked all the time, do I need to step out of the room? No, you do not need to step out of the room. That's okay. However, it's important to note that in a public meeting, nonverbal communication is considered communication and could be seen as taking part in the discussion. So we do have, I won't say any names, but we do have some people who will step out because they don't trust themselves from giving a thumbs up or a wink or so. I don't know who winks anymore, but you know, something. So you do want to make sure you're careful when you are in a public meeting. Now, if you, I don't know, does this board do any standalone executive sessions by chance? Does anyone want to give me a thumbs up or thumbs down?
Yeah, we do executive sessions.
Okay. So if you do a standalone executive session, so there's no public part before you go into the executive session, that can make things trickier, right? Because you need to publicly announce this before any action is taken. Well, if there's no public portion before the executive session, how do you announce it? And that is a great question, because even if that's the case, you still have to announce it before the executive session and announce it publicly. Our recommendation is if you are I shouldn't say most, well, I'll say most governing bodies plan around this by having that public session portion before you go into executive session, even if it's for a few minutes, and that is allowed. But if your governing body does tend to do this at times, we recommend that you give us a call and let us help you look at the different options that your specific governing body has at making that announcement publicly before the executive session, because the requirement is still there, even if there is not a portion of the meeting set aside for it. Now, this wouldn't be a law if there wasn't some kind of exception. And so that exception falls around meeting quorum. So quorum is the minimum number of people needed in order for your governing body to do business. And so I'll just use the example of if you've got a 5-person board, usually that's going to be a simple majority of 3 people is the quorum. So let's say you've got a 5-member board. I'm on a 5-member board, and 3 of us have a conflict of interest. All right, and they're all 3 of us, it's actual. That means only 2 people are left, which means we can't actually do anything with this topic ever until the makeup of our board changes. Well, the goal of this law is not to stop business from happening. It's just to make it happen in a way that your community can know what's going on. And so the exception works like this. If that situation arises, 5-member board, 3 people have an actual conflict of interest, all 3 of us are going to make our announcement of our conflict of interest before any action happens. Okay, and then all 3 of us are not going to be allowed to discuss or debate the topic. However, one of us is going to be allowed to vote. You are allowed to have the minimum number of members vote in order to meet your quorum. So in that example, we needed 1 to vote, so 1 person would get to vote. Now, you might be wondering, well, who gets to vote? That's a great question. The law does not dictate that for public bodies. That means you can choose who it is to vote. However, we recommend at the Ethics Commission that you put a policy in place kind of setting up how you're going to make that decision, whether you base it off of tenure or seat position. Having a policy in place protects the person who now has to vote while they have a conflict of interest. It takes away the appearance of it looking like you're cherry picking someone for that specific topic to vote on. So we recommend that you have a policy in place deciding who that is. We do not have jurisdiction over public records law. However, whether you're an employee or whether you are an elected official, it benefits you greatly to make sure that there is an official record of your announcement of your conflict of interest. So for employees, keep that email you sent your supervisor and keep their response. For elected officials, make sure it's on that official recording. If that's written minutes, make sure it's in there when you approve them. If it's, a video or an audio recording, make sure that it can be heard on there. Because if anything does come up, that's the first place that is gone to figure out what's going on. And so it just makes life so much easier if it is in one of those recordings. Okay, we have a couple of questions that we are going to go over as a group. And so I'm just going to ask the question. They're all yes or no questions. So I'll just, if you think yes, put your hand up if you've got a camera, and we'll just do it that way. I think that'll work. So let's see here. Make it so I can actually see the people who are on the camera. Okay, here we go. So first question. Your agency contracts with a consulting firm. Your spouse was recently employed by this firm, but does not work on agency-related projects. Would you have a conflict of interest if a contracting matter involving this firm came before you? If you think yes, go ahead and raise your hand. Does the power of groupthink kick in? Let's see here. All right, yeah. The correct answer to this is yes, you would have. Is anyone brave enough to say if they think it'd be a potential or actual? Go ahead and unmute and call it out. What do you think? Sure. Dennis.
I would say potential.
Okay, yeah. I will warn all of you that there's a lot of assumed information in these questions, so I apologize. This is actually technically an actual, because if you're dealing with a contracting matter, there will be a financial effect. And so that is why, but there's a lot of implied information in that question. So I only bring that up because sometimes people answer the question, but they have like a million other questions in their mind, which is great, because if someone called me asking me this question, I would have like 4 or 5 more questions I'd be asking them myself. So that's okay for you to have more questions. The next question is going to be, well, actually, what if instead of your spouse who's hired by the consulting firm, it's your cousin? If you think it's a conflict of interest, raise your hand. If your cousin works at it. Thumbs down works great too. I can see that as a no. Yeah, that's a no, right? Because cousin is not considered a relative. Now, if your cousin lives with you, there's a million ways we could probably twist this, but yeah, a cousin is not considered a relative. And so in that case, there would not be a conflict of interest. All right. Next question is, you are serving on a board and you are discussing licensing requirements for agency vendors. Your father-in-law owns a catering business that sometimes puts in bids for agency contracts. Do you have a conflict of interest when discussing this at a meeting? Yes or no?
Yes.
Thumbs up, thumbs down. All right. The correct answer to this is yes. You do have a conflict of interest. Now, does anyone want to guess actual potential here?
Let's go potential because it's still being discussed.
Perfect. Yes. So even though you're not taking any action that is going to lead to a financial effect yet, because your action could lead to it, and you are putting things into that contract, this is a potential conflict of interest. And so that's important to keep in mind when you are going through those processes of whether or not you have a conflict of interest on these topics. All right. Does anyone have any questions on conflicts of interest? No questions. Oh, one question. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm also on a planning commission, and I know that even if there's not a pecuniary benefit to a decision that might make, that would make that a actual conflict, there could be situations where there's a potential conflict if I know a particular developer, and then we were always told to say, I have a relationship with this developer, but I still am able, in my mind, to make a unbiased decision. Does that not weigh in anywhere?
Well, that's a great thing to bring up. So that may be something that is specific to that particular board or commission's charter. Per the law, just knowing someone, being friends with someone, doesn't automatically make them someone who would fit into conflicts of interest.
Okay.
And so your agency or your department or whoever it is you're working with, they may have other policies that also are more strict, that dictate what you do in certain situations. And that's fine. You're fine to follow those. This training will specifically just be about what the ethics law says about those particular items. And that is one of the things that makes, this isn't a public meetings law training, but that's one of the things that can make public meetings so difficult to navigate, is because you've got multiple entities all having their input in what you're doing. And so keeping track of all that can be tricky at times. So that's a great thing to bring up for sure. Any other questions? All right. Let's go ahead and continue on. We're now going to move on to prohibited use of office. Again, we always train this with conflicts of interest because the way that it's worded is very similar. And so it's important to know both of these. So prohibited use of office, what is that? Well, that is anytime you use your official capacity for the economic benefit of you, a relative, a household member, or a business with which you, a relative or household member, are associated. That wording is very similar to conflicts of interest. So how do you know if you have a prohibited use of office? you ask yourself this question: do I only have this opportunity because I'm a public official? If the answer to that question is yes, it's probably prohibited. If the answer to that is no, that means the general public has the same opportunity that you have. And so that means it's probably going to be allowed. Sometimes that might even be a more clear way to ask this question is, does the general public have the same opportunity as me? Or do I only have this opportunity because I'm a trainer at OGEC? Right? And so, examples of this, a good example of this would be, let's say you have one of the directors for your agency happens to have the keys because of their responsibility. They have the keys to the agency's storage unit. And inside one of those storage units, there is a gap that would fit their RV perfectly. And it's winter, it's rainy. And so they decide, you know what, I'm going to park my RV in that storage unit and it will be protected, and that'll be great. Is that a prohibited use of office? Yes, that is. Because can the general public park their RV in your agency's storage? No, they can't. They only have that opportunity because they happen to have the keys because of their position. And so that's what this looks like. Now let's look at a few things about that example. First question, does that person parking their RV in the storage, does that lead to a cost for your agency? What do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down? That's tricky, huh? So it's viewed by the law that it doesn't, because whether they park it in there or not, the gap would just be there. You know what I mean? It's not space that it was empty space essentially. So it's not costing your agency any money. That's an important thing to understand, that for prohibited use of office, it does not have to result in a cost for the public body. Okay. The second question is, does that person, are they making any money by parking their RV in that spot? Tough, right?
Not making money, but saving money.
Exactly. So it doesn't have to lead to actually making money. It just has to lead to a financial benefit, which could be avoiding an expense or saving money. And so when it comes to prohibited use of office, that's important to keep in mind that sometimes it doesn't cost your agency any money. And sometimes they're not even really making anything from it, but they are avoiding having to pay for something. Now, when it comes to prohibited use of office, there are quite a few exceptions that are important to know. First is going to be official compensation package. So for employees, this could be their salary or their benefits, but this also could look like use of an agency vehicle. It could look like access to events that you would normally have to pay for, but you have to be there. This could be lodging and attendance at a conference. This can look like a lot of things. If it's in your official compensation package, you are allowed to receive it. It's not a prohibited use of your office. Also, reimbursement. You are allowed to be reimbursed, and it is not a violation of the ethics law. That's a good thing. This does not override your agency's policies or procedures. You still need to follow those. This just allows you to be reimbursed. Now, if you use a card that earns rewards, miles, or some kind of points, that could be a violation of the ethics law. That could be a prohibited use of office because you are then earning rewards for something your agency is purchasing. Can the general public earn rewards on purchases your agency makes? No, they can't. Because that's the case, that could be a violation. This can be avoided if you have a policy that allows people to receive those rewards, then they can. If it's in the official compensation package, that also would be allowed. But if there's not a policy in place, that could lead to a violation. One thing I like to point out with this particular item, at OGEC, one of the places that we shop for our office supplies is Safeway. And so if I'm on my way in and they say, hey, we're short on this, can you pick it up at Safeway? If I stop at Safeway and get those items, what am I likely to do when I go to pay? I'm likely to put in my phone number, right? What does that do? that makes those items cost less. I'm saving my agency money. But because I'm earning gas rewards, it is still a violation. So even though I'm saving the agency money, it still could be a prohibited use of office. So again, it doesn't matter the cost of the agency, anything like that. It's all about, am I receiving something that I'm only getting because of my official position, my official capacity? Now, honorarium. Honorarium is any time that you are providing a service within your official role to a third party, and then afterwards they say thank you by giving you something of value. Maybe it's a gift card, maybe it's a centerpiece off one of the tables, some kind of token. The main example we have of this is giving a speech at a conference. If you give a speech at a conference and afterwards they're like, thank you so much, here's a gift card, you are allowed to receive that up to $50 in value per event. Now, what that means is if you speak at that conference twice a year, you can receive that honorarium twice a year. Now, this is not something that you worked on with them beforehand or was offered you before you provided the service. If they call me up and say, hey, Chris, we'd like you to speak at this conference, we've got a $50 gift card with your name on it, that's just me getting paid $50 to do a job. It has to be something that you were not a part of making happen that they gave you afterwards. So that's important to keep in mind. Professional Achievement Awards. I don't know why our two examples are as such, but if you were to win Teacher of the Year award, you win a couple $1,000s. It's pretty cool. If you win the Nobel Prize, which seems like a big jump, you win about $1.2 million. You're allowed to receive those. That's awesome. Good job. You're allowed to receive Professional Achievement Awards, and that's fine. This is not something, however, that you are soliciting or campaigning yourself to receive. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to get people to vote on you, that's maybe not exactly what fits into this exception. Now, we are not going to talk about gifts today. There's a whole hour-long training on gifts just by itself. But gifts are not considered a prohibited use of office. So if you're given something and it falls into the gift provisions, it will not be looked at as a prohibited use of office. You would then go through the gift provisions to see if you can accept it. And just briefly on gifts, if the source of the gift, if you can affect that source financially with taking action as a public official, then there is a financial interest in you, and you are limited to $50 per calendar year per source. If you cannot take any actions as a public official that financially affect the source, there is no interest and you can accept it no matter its value. So if you want more information on this, we do provide this training once a month. Go ahead and sign up on our website, join the webinar, and we can give you more information about that. The last exception we're going to look at is legal expense trust funds. If you have a legal expense trust fund, you can receive contributions to it, and it's not a violation. If you want more information about this, you need to file this through us at the Ethics Commission anyway. So give us a call. We can give you more information about that. All right, a really fun game we're about to play, so prepare yourselves. We're going to play Spot the Ethics Law Violation. So give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. I'm going to read the number, and then you can tell me if you think that it is a violation or not. So number 1, using the agency's open Wi-Fi network on a personal device during a break. Is that a violation or not? Got some thumbs downs. A sideways thumb from Betty. Oh, down. Okay. Yeah, that is not a violation. Again, open implies that it's open to the public. Again, we've got a lot. These questions need some work, maybe. So number 2, picking up your spouse from the airport in an agency vehicle. Is that a violation or no? What do you think? Got some thumbs up. Yeah, that is a violation. Unless somehow that's one of your job duties, that's a violation. Number 3, taking home an old surplus computer monitor that was going to be thrown away. Is that a violation? Yes or no? Yeah. Okay, we got an unsure. That's okay. Yeah, that is a violation. It needs to go through the process that your agency has that makes it available to the public. There is very specific rules that every entity, government entity, has about this, and so just follow those before you take anything, and usually you're all right. And then last is number 4, accepting a $25 gift card for being a speaker at an event. What do you think? Yes or no? Yeah, that's an honorarium. And so that would be allowed. You could take that, remember, up to $50 in value per event. Awesome job, everyone. Remember, with prohibited use of office, it's all about obtaining that financial gain and that monetary benefit. So that could be avoiding an expense, and it does not have to result in a cost to the public body. All right. Any questions about prohibited use of office? Okay, great. We're going to move on. We're just going to do private employment, and then we're going to I'll wrap things up. So we're almost done. Private employment is a subcategory of prohibited use of office. It's just more directed at public officials who are privately employed. So first, you should know you're allowed to be privately employed, whether that is you have a private employer or you have your own private income producing activity. That is allowed. Did someone speak? I thought I heard a noise. I apologize. Yeah, so regardless of what that is, if you have your own business, you work for somebody, you are allowed to be privately employed. You just want to make sure that you do not create opportunities for your private employment with your public official position. So you don't want to, put things in place so that you can then hire yourself privately to do that job. Right? You also want to make sure there is clear distinction between you as a public official and you as a private employee. And this really helps because when it comes to these particular issues, we're going to talk about how the law is enforced and everything comes before our commission. But if our commission is looking at this, it really comes down to how easy it is to see that the resources and what you're using as a public official versus a private employee. It really benefits you. So we're talking about time used, resources used, money earned, clients used, all of it. You want to make sure there is that clear distinction between your roles. You also want to make sure that you don't promise action now for future employment. You can't say, hey, I will vote for your company to get this contract if you make me your CFO when my term ends. That's against the law. Please don't do that. Also, if you are going to be offered a job, you want to make sure of 2 things outside of being a public official. You want to make sure of 2 things. First, you want to make sure that you didn't do anything, you didn't take any action that created that job. Again, you cannot create a job for you to then have. Secondly, you want to make sure that when you're hired, that you're being hired because of your job experience, your job history, maybe your interview, you had a great interview, your resume, all of those things. You don't want to be hired because it benefits them in some way to have someone in your official role on their payroll. Now, you might be wondering, well, how the heck do I know that? And that's a great question. Really, what you're looking for is you want to look for red flags in the hiring process. A lot of times, if the job was publicly advertised and anyone in the general public could have applied for it, a lot of times that means everything's going to be good. But if you're being offered a job in a back alley somewhere, that probably needs to be a red flag that you should look into that situation to make sure it's something you can take. And so that's kind of just, if something feels off, look into it. Now, confidential information. You cannot use confidential information that you learn as a public official to benefit your private employment. So you can't learn something and then go use that because you're the only one who knows the public doesn't know about it. All right. This is one of 2 rules that goes with you even when you're done being a public official. So normally when you stop being a public official, your term ends, you don't re-up it. You're now, you're good. You're not a public official. These don't apply to you. However, this one still does. So if you learn something today as a public official, and then tomorrow your term ends, Wednesday, you can't then turn around and use that information to benefit your private employment. You need to wait for that item to become public knowledge through natural means. The other item that goes with you, even when you're done being a public official, is around contracts. So regardless of whether the contract is authorized by an individual public official or by a public body, if you play a significant role in that contract coming into existence, you cannot work under it for 2 years from that contract start date. So you've got to wait 2 years. That means if you sign a contract today and your term ends tomorrow, you can't then get hired under that contract on Wednesday. You've got to wait 2 years. Now, we do have some significant roles listed there. The tricky thing about significant roles is that each entity tends to call their different positions and roles by different names. And so we try not to put too many up because it can be confusing. But if you're signing a contract or you're responsible for selecting who's getting the contract in some way, those are generally considered to be significant roles. If you do want to know if yours is considered significant, give us a call and we can kind of assess your role with you and figure that out with you. So that's what that looks like. Remember, with private employment, don't use any government body time or resources for your private employment. Don't take any action as a public official that creates opportunity for your private employment. Don't use confidential information to benefit your private employment. And make sure you disclose all of your conflicts of interest. We find that if you own your own business, if you're privately employed, but especially if you own your own business, your opportunity for having a conflict of interest skyrockets. So make sure you're being aware of that if that is your situation. All right, we got a couple of questions that we're going to answer in our regular fashion, thumbs up, thumbs down, and then we will wrap things up. So you develop a close working relationship with a school vendor who has a job opening available. You contact the vendor and recommend your daughter for the job. You have violated ethics law, true or false? What do you think? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Oh, we got a couple thumbs down. This one's tricky, huh? So this one is true. You have violated. Now, I will tell you that why this one is tricky is because this is around your relationship with a vendor. That is a working relationship that you only have because of your position. Now, you might argue, well, couldn't anyone have a relationship with anybody? And yes, you could argue that. But that's why this question is one of my least favorite that we ask people. This one is trickier, but it is viewed, if you have that working relationship and there wasn't a relationship before it, it absolutely could be viewed as that being a working relationship. And so you want to make sure that you are careful if that is something that you have obtained, which is easy to do in small communities, right? A lot of small communities out there have people that have known each other for years before they got into the role they did. And not even in small communities, just having a working relationship, you can develop a friendship with people over time. And so you just want to make sure you're being mindful of that in these situations. Now, let's say it's not your daughter or one of your family
I think
members.
Commissioner Izumi had a question. For
Oh,
that.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just wondering, like, to remove the conflict of interest, if you didn't contact the vendor and recommend your daughter, would that then remove the conflict of interest? Is that the sticky part there, that you contacted the vendor?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, that's I mean, again, that assumed information, right? It's assumed that she applied for it like everybody else went through the process.
Right.
If they're just offering it to your daughter, because it's your daughter, even if you weren't involved, that also could be a problem. But if it's something that was applied for like normal, was open to the public, nothing like that happened, and you didn't call that vendor, then they could get that job and it wouldn't be a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. Now, let's say instead of your daughter or family, it is a close family friend. Is that now a violation if you call them and ask for them to give that person a look-see? What do you think? Got some thumbs down, some thinking faces. Yeah, so this one is a no. So remember, friends are not a conflict of interest. They're not a prohibited use of office. It's only for yourself, relatives, household members, or businesses that you're associated with, right? Now, this doesn't mean that you should call them up to try and get them to hire your friend, right? Optics is definitely a real thing when it comes to conflicts of interest and prohibited use of office. And so that is something that we recognize you will need to take into consideration at times, which is why we train you what the law says. If you would like to hold yourself to a stricter code or your agency's policies or procedures are more strict, that's fine. As long as, for the ethics law, as long as you're following at least what the ethics law says, you are good. All right, how about in addition to your role as a public official, you also own your own business? Can you promote your business by handing out business cards at an agency's public meeting? Yes or no? What do you think? Oh, we got some questionings. Yeah, we got some no's. Yeah, this one is no. Remember that you want to make sure you have that separation between your role as a public official and your role as a private employee. So if you are there in an acting role as a commissioner or as an elected official, then you need to be there only in that role. So great job, everyone. All right.
I have a question though on that.
Sure, yeah.
I want to push back a little bit because it's at a
Please.
public meeting.
Yep.
And so actually, if they were soliciting, lots, you go to a lot of these things and they say, drop your business card in and blah, blah,
Yep.
blah. Everybody has the opportunity to do that because it's a public meeting.
Correct.
So that's why I was sideways on that one.
Yeah, that is tough. And that's why the issue is that if you're there in your specific role, then that is the role. You're not supposed to, because then that's you, even though the problem isn't that you put your card in there. The problem is that you were promoting your personal business while acting as a public official.
Okay. It's a good thing I don't have a business. I won't be.
Well, there you go. Yeah. It's the way that the law is worded. It can be very tricky.
Yeah.
And we understand that. And so if you ever do have questions about a basket that you put a card in or things like that, please call us and we'll definitely go through that stuff with you. I also want to point out too, I realize my normal question that I ask here is not on, I'm missing that slide somehow. When it comes to prohibited use of office and when it comes to private employment, which is a subcategory, it's not, you do not have to be successful for it to be a violation. So it's the attempt to use your office that is the violation. So if we use that vendor hiring your daughter example, the moment I call that vendor and say, hey, my daughter's applying for this job of yours, you should hire her. Even if they don't hire her, I have still violated the prohibited use of office provision because I attempted to use my position for economic benefit. So when it comes to prohibited use of office, you don't have to be successful. And that's a key thing to remember. And normally I would have caught it before because I have a slide that reminds me, but it is not here. So I just want to make sure I get that part out there. All right. What about if you are, what if you only, and this actually goes to what someone had asked earlier, if you are only promoting your business personally or privately, so you only deliver orders, advertise on social media, and hand out your business cards, flyers outside of the office while not acting on the capacity as a public official, would doing so violate the Oregon government ethics law if someone then hired your business? Is that a problem? Yeah, that's not a problem, right? You're not using any of your government body time, resources, none of your public official role to perform any of those duties, you're good. You're fine. That one's worded strangely. So, all right. So we've covered a lot of things today, and obviously there's a couple more things that the law has made up, but I want to finish things out by just pointing out how it's enforced. We are almost 100% complaint driven. That means that we're not hiding in your meetings up in the ducks, listening to people talking. We only know about these things if someone writes us and alleges that a violation has occurred by somebody. And so when someone does write a complaint to us, they have to sign it, first of all. We do not accept anonymous complaints. We are legally obliged to open all complaints in what's called preliminary review. That's where we check it to make sure it's in our jurisdiction and if there's enough information there that it warrants an investigation. Only our commission can move it to investigation from preliminary review, and only our commission can decide if there was a violation and what a sanction would be because of that violation. What you need to know is that there is a max civil penalty for an ethics law violation of $5,000 or more, or $5,000, excuse me, that can go up with a few specific things being in place. But what you also should know is that our commission is very committed to this process being educational. They know that most public officials are just people trying to do their job, just people trying to help their communities. Most of our public officials are not out there trying to get around laws and things like that. So a vast majority of what goes out are letters of education. And so that is important to know in case you ever find yourself in that situation. Before you find yourself in that situation, know that we do provide written advice to people. And our written advice comes with what's called safe harbor protection. That means if you follow the advice, the most you could receive for a sanction, if there was still a violation, would be a letter of education. And so that's a nice little piece of security to have in your back pocket when dealing with the you know, 7 days for staff advice, 14 for opinions, and 60 for commission advisory opinions. But if you do find yourself, you know, the meeting's at 6, that's 4:30, please give us a call. We may not be able to get you written advice in time, but you're still going to get someone who is committed to knowing these rules and laws, helping you figure out what the best step to take is. So there's still value in that. Did I hear someone ask a question? Okay. At this time, that is the entirety of the training. I am available to answer any questions anyone has. I realize that there's other things happening besides just my training. So whatever needs to happen now can go ahead, but I am available for questions if anyone has any.
Any questions from folks on the screen? Doesn't look like it. You were
All
so
right.
thorough. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks everyone. It's been a pleasure. And again, if you ever have questions, reach out to us. Again, we're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. We're not going to ask you if you talked to your boss yet. We're just going to help you figure out what it is that you're asking. So please reach out to us. Thank you for letting me be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. All right. I think that concludes the work session. I'm looking to folks in the meeting room to make sure that I'm not missing anything additional that needs to be discussed.
No, that is all that we have.
Great. Okay. Well, then we'll adjourn the work session and reconvene tomorrow morning. We have executive session at 8:30 tomorrow morning, and then that's followed by a business meeting at 9:30. So thank you all for spending time with us today.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.